were talking about functions, right? So we covered a lot of things. I also asked you a few things, right? About like your domain भनेको के हो, range भनेको के हो. Then I also we also in the class did these things like यसमा चाहिँ कुन function हो, कुन function होइन भन्ने कुराहरू पनि. We also learned about vertical line test, right? So vertical line test मा चाहिँ what we found out was when you draw a vertical line, so a vertical line means a line that is parallel to the y-axis. So यसमा के हुन्छ भने, so this is the y-axis, right? This is the y-axis. So when you draw a line parallel to the y-axis, and if it cuts the function at more than one point, then it's if it cuts the relation or the graph at more than one point, then we know that it is not a function, right? But when you draw a vertical line and it cuts the function at only one point, then it is actually a function, right? So we covered that one. I know. So so in this animation, like it shows when we are drawing a vertical line through the graphs, in only the graphs A and C, you can see that the vertical line cuts the graphs at one point. यो दुईटामा चाहिँ दुईटा पोइन्टमा क्रस गर्छन्. That is why only A and C are functions and B and D are not functions, right? Now in this class, we are going to learn about horizontal line test, right? So based on a vertical line test, what we found out was a vertical line test is basically used to find out if something, if a given relation is a function or not, right? Now in horizontal line test, we want to take it a step further and we want to find out. So vertical line test गरेर हामीलाई थाहा हुन्छ त्यो फंक्सन हो कि हैन भनेर. अब त्यो फंक्सन, so in various types of relations, there were two types of relations that forms a function, right? So one was one to one and the other one was many to one, right? So now once we establish whether something is a function or not, we will do something called the horizontal line test to find out if it is a one-to-one function. I know. So what that means is a function is a one-to-one function if and only if no horizontal line. अब horizontal line भन्ने बित्तिकै के भयो त? It's a line that is parallel to the x-axis, right? So if this is my line, if this is the coordinate axis, so this is the x-axis and this one is the y-axis, right? So our vertical line test हामीले गर्दाखेरि what we did was we actually had drawn lines that was parallel to the y-axis, right? So this is the vertical line. अब horizontal line भनेको चाहिँ के हो भने we draw lines that are parallel to the x-axis. We draw lines that are parallel to the x-axis. अनि त्यसपछि यदि यो horizontal line ले चाहिँ त्यो फंक्सनलाई एकचोटि मात्र intersect गर्यो भने we say that the function is one-to-one function. Otherwise, the function is a many-to-one function, right? So let us go back to our initial graphs, right? So Esma, like what I want you to do now is I want you to try drawing horizontal lines and then tell me. So अब जस्तो हामीले के establish गर्यौं भने vertical line test बाट what we established was only two of these are functions, right? So vertical line बाट what we established is this is a function किनकि यो vertical line ले चाहिँ एक पोइन्टर मात्र intersect गर्छ, and then this is a function, right? Because any vertical line that is drawn on this graph only intersects this graph at one particular point. So this is not a function, right? This is not a function किनकि this vertical line is intersecting this particular graph at 2 points, right? We also established this one is also not a function किनकि यो vertical line ले पनि यो graph लाई कतिवटा point मा intersect गर्छ त? दुईटा point मा intersect गर्छ. Now what I want to do is, because I know that, so this is not a function, but this is a function, right? So this is a function and this is also a function. Now what I want you to do is I want you to use the horizontal line test and tell me if A is a one-to-one function or not, and similarly if C is a one-to-one function or not. So can you take 1 minute to do that? So copy this graph in your exercise books, draw horizontal lines, and then find out if which of these functions are one-to-one functions. Okay, and then type down your answers. Okay, so Sudarshan says only A is one-to-one function. All right. Sudarshan says only A. Sadiksha thinks only A is a one-on-one function. Mehak says only A. So I need a response from everyone. You cannot take forever to do this. Okay. Everyone has to respond, as is the rule in the class. So Roshan says A. Let me go back to the slide. Okay, Ali says A. Okay, 10 more seconds. Take 10 more seconds. All right. So in fact, like that, that's actually correct. So only A is one-to-one function. Can you give a, so think about it. So this is the x-axis, right? So this is the x-axis, and I'm going to draw a line of parallel to the x-axis. So your line, you see, so this particular function at only one point, right? So that is why this is a one-on-one function. So your line like mathi uthai pani, or your line talo lage pani, this line is going to intersect this function at only one point at all times, and that is why this is a one-to-one function. All right. So here, so if I'll draw a line parallel to the x-axis here, can you see that this particular line intersects the graph at 2 points, right? And that is why this is not a one-to-one function, right? This is not a one-to-one function because we have two particular duita domain ko chai euta range cha, right? So for example, like if you look here, so u point ko value is same as the value that I get for this function at +3 or -3 ko value more or less similar आउँछ नि. And so that is why this is not a one-to-one function based on the horizontal line test, right? So now what I'll do is we'll move ahead. So this is again the vertical lines. Now this is once again the definitions of the domain and range. So domain भनेको के हो भने, so x र y एउटा set of ordered pairs छ भने domain is basically all the set of all the x coordinates. So in other words, what you can also say is like, so if this is once again the representation of our function, and this one is x and this one is y, so called the domain, right? So this thing is called the domain, right? And this thing is called the range, right? So this thing is called the range, right? So we covered that. Now we'll move on. Now we'll do some exercise, okay? So this is one particular set of ordered pairs. So I want you to list all the domains. So I want you to take around 10 to 15 seconds and then list all the domains. So remember, domain is all the x coordinate, right? So I want you to say that for this function d equals to 2, and then I want you to list down as a form of set. So you have all done set. So what is the domain? So it's 2, right? यहाँ x coordinate के छ 2 छ, so that is why 2 is a domain. अब यहाँको domain के भयो, यहाँको के भयो, यहाँको के भयो. So I want you to list down the domains of that particular set of ordered pairs, and then I also want you to list down the range R. So can you do that? And I'll be monitoring the answers in the chat. So Mishra says it's 2, -1, 2, and 0. That's correct. Yeah, this reason says the same thing. That's correct as well. It's all right. Yeah, so I think most of you can get this answer, right? So your domain मा चाहिँ के भयो भने 2 -1 2 0 अनि त्यसपछि रेन्ज के भयो भने 3 0 -5 अनि -3. So we'll let me get it this rid of this. So but now here comes the tricky part. Okay, here comes the tricky part. So most of you said four domains, right? So what you did was you took the 2 here and then you took -1. But can you see that this particular 2 and this 2 is the same 2, right? Right, so we don't have to write the same thing twice in a set, and so that is why like we only write one of these. So what exactly, so what is the actual answer? So 2 -1 and 0, because we will omit these two you already this has been used, this has already come forth. However, if I have to show this, so in the next step, what I want you to do is I want you to show this in this form of diagram, right? So I want you to show this in this form of diagrams. I want you to list all the domains here as X. I want you to list all the domain range elements there as Y, and then I want you to draw arrows, right? I want you to draw arrows. So can you do that? I want you to do that, and then I'll ask some of you to share your screen and show me your answer. Can all of you draw a representation of the set like this? And at the end of the class, what we'll do is you will send this to me as a picture. Right, so let's see. So यसमा अब के हुन्छ त, let me use a different color. So let's see. So your 2 भयो, this is -1 and this one is 0, right? Now on the other side what we have is 3, we have 0, we have a -5, and then we have -3, right? Now let me just put these here so it's easier to draw lines, and then here. Let me use a different color now. So what we'll do is we'll draw the relation. So your 2 points are related. So first one, 2 is related with 3, right? So we'll draw a line here, and it shows that त्यो फंक्शन बाट निस्किसकेपछि so त्यो फंक्शनमा यदि मैले 2 इनपुट भ्यालु राखे भने it goes to 3. Similarly, -1 goes to 0, right? So -1 will go to 0. त्यसै गरी 2 also goes to -5. So from 2 now I need to draw another one, right? And that goes here. Similarly, 0 बाट कहाँ जान्छ त, -3 मा जान्छ, right? Now based on this I want you to tell me what kind of relation is this. So is it 1 to 1, or is it many to 1, or 1 to many, or many to many? So what kind of relation is this? Is it 1 to 1, or many to 1, or many to many, or 1 to many? So can you write down? Can you write down what kind of relation is this? So Mehek says it's 1 to many. Srijan says it's 1 to many. Sudarshan says it's 1 to many. Swastika also says the same thing. All right, yes, Mehek, can you explain it to me why it is 1 to many? Mehek, please turn on your mic. I cannot hear you, Mehek.
Because
Because
a domain has 2 images.
so which element in the domain has 2 images?
2.
And what are those images?
3 and minus 5.
Right. So this is what kind of relation is this?
One to many.
Okay, so this is one to many. That's actually correct. Now, based on your understanding of a function, right? Based on your understanding of function, so I told you there are four kind of relation, right? So one to many to one, and many to many, right? Now, so you correct, all most of you correctly identified this is a one to many relation. Now I want you to tell me whether this is a function or not. So if you think it is a function, type S. If you think it's not a function, type no. So Swastika thinks it's not a function. Okay, we'll get back to you in a moment. I need everyone to respond. Roshan says it's not a function. Sadiksha says it's not a function. Sudarshan says it's not a function. Okay, so while everyone is responding, Swastika, can you tell me why is it not a function? Swastika, can you tell me why is it not a function?
So
Huh?
to be function, only one image is needed. To be function, only one image is needed.
So it has to be a unique image, right? Okay. Yes, Sudarshan, can you explain it to me again, once again? Or can you build up on what Swastika said? So why do you think it's not a function? Sudarshan, please turn on your mic, okay?
Because one to one and many to one relations are only function.
Right? That's actually correct. Samishrika, do you agree? Samishrika, do you agree to what Sudarshan said?
Yes, sir.
So what is needed for a relation to be a function? कुन केसमा चाहिँ एउटा रिलेसनलाई फंक्सन भन्न मिल्छ?
There should be equal range.
Okay, what else? What do you mean by equal range? Can you tell me more? What do you mean by equal range? Huh? What do you mean by equal range? Can you tell me more?
X and Y, there should be same value or
Roshan, do you agree with what Sumasrika just said?
I
Roshan,
am
do
not.
you agree?
I don't have any idea for this.
Okay, Sadiq, do you agree with what Sumasrika said just now? That the domain and range has to be equal? What
Sir,
do you
I
think?
actually did not get her.
Can you say that once again?
I actually did not get her point.
Okay, Sumasrika, can you please explain your point once again?
range should be equal to the codomain.
So, codomain. Okay, yes, that's actually a valid point. So, so it seems like you have studied in advance. So, codomain भन्नाले के हो नानी? Can you say it to all of us? Submisrika?
Codomain not mapped with the equal elements of domain.
Yes, exactly. So, what Samishrika said is actually correct. But what we'll do is we'll wait for the topic to come, right? So what she means is this is not a function, as all of you said. किनकि के हुन्छ भने यसमा चाहिँ as you can see, so this is 2, this is -1, and then 0, right? And then it's 3, 0, -5, and then -3, right? So as you can see, as most of you pointed out, so 2 is also mapped to 3 and 2 is mapped to -5, right? So the moment this happens, it's not a function. It's not a function. किनकि this is a many to one function. So यो दुईको चाहिँ दुईवटा इमेज छ, 3 र -5. तर हाम्रो फंक्सनको ओरिजिनल डेफिनेसन के हो भने every element from the domain should have a unique image, right? And that is why it's not a function. But what I don't want you to think is for something to be a function, it has to have equal number of elements in domain and range. For example, like let me give you another question for you to tell me whether this is a function or not. Okay, so let's see. To tell me if this is x and this is y, I want you to tell me this is a function or not. So if you think it's a function type y, if you think it's not a function type n. So if you think it's a function type y, if you think it's not a function type n, the one that I just said. So Sadiksha thinks it is a function. Okay. Roshan thinks it's a function. Sudarshan thinks it's a function. Hey, Ellie, why do you think it's a function? Can you speak
Yes,
up?
sir.
Why do you think it's a function? So you said yes,
Many,
right?
yes.
Kina? Kina?
Many to one. Many to
So
one.
it is many to, right? And every element has a unique image here, right? So तीन को unique
Yes.
भनेको के हो? एउटा मात्र image हुनु पर्ने हो, right? So if you can see, so there are three elements in the domain, right? So there are three elements in the domain, and here is only two. So Samishrika, does it make sense when I say that it doesn't have to be equal, right? The number of elements in the domain doesn't have to be equal to the number of elements in the range for something to be a function. Does that make sense now, Samishrika?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's amazing. So now let's move on. Um, uh, so now, as it says in this graph, so let me get rid of all of this. So the set of ordered pairs may be an infinite number of points described by a graph. So for example, like let's look at this particular graph, right? And I wanted to pardon the sound effect. So यसमा चाहिँ के छ भने, so this is the x coordinate, right? So as I said, domain is the set of all x elements, and range is the set of all y elements, right? So I want you to look at this particular graph and then write the set notation for the domain and the set notation for the range, right? So I'm going to give you around 30 seconds for this. So I want you to look at this graph and then write down the set notation for the domain. So a notation that can capture all the elements that will fall in the set of the domain, and same thing for the set of range. So यसमा चाहिँ त्यो डोमेनको because it's impossible to write down all the elements on the number line, right? Axisमा कतिवटा number छ त, it's impossible to write that down. So the same thing goes for the range as well. So I want you to come up with a way to do that. Okay, so Roshan says it's 1 comma 1. I don't know what it means, so I'll ask you to explain in a moment, but I'm waiting to get an answer from everyone. So remember, you have studied set, right? You have to use your knowledge from set to write down the domain and the range for this function. Okay, Roshan, can you explain it to me? Why do you think it's 1 1? So Roshan says something like this. So 1 comma 1. Okay, Roshan,
Sir,
can you explain it?
yes, sir. Sir, it have touched this part x-axis and y-axis. So in the point 1 and 1, so I wrote 1 comma 1.
So you mean you are just taking this particular point, right?
This touched one, yeah,
Okay,
1 and 1.
but how does that relate the domain and range? You know, that's just one point that falls on the function, right? Even at this point, so if you think about it, in fact, it's not even a 1 comma 1, it's 0 comma 1, right? Because this is the origin, no? It's 0 comma 1, right? Even at this point falls on the graph, right? So that's not a correct answer, but that's a good try. Um, uh, all right, let me see who else has responded. Um, how about Swastika? Would you like to give it a shot, or say Srijan? Srijan, what do you think? So, what do you think? What might be the domain for this function?
Sir, 4 comma 4.
2 comma 4, but what does that mean?
Sir, 4 comma 4.
4, 4. So where is 4, 4? So 4 is not even here, you know, it goes on the other side.
Not 4, 4, sir. It's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, no, that's the wrong answer. Okay, before that, so first of all, if you'll do a vertical line test on this, what do you think? Is it a function or not? Srijan, what do you think?
Sir, in vertical line test,
Mm-hmm.
sir, it's a function.
Right? So यहाँ मैले यो y axis मा चाहिँ parallel को line बनाए भने it's always going to intersect at only one point of the graph, right? So it is actually a function.
Yes, sir.
Now we'll use the horizontal line test to establish whether it is a one-to-one function or many-to-one function. So what do you think? Is it one-to-one or many-to-one?
Sir, I'm confused on this.
Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to draw a horizontal line, right? So I'm going to draw a horizontal line here. You know, so how many point does the horizontal line intersect on the particular graph?
Two.
Graph so when it intersects on 2, what kind of function is that? Is it one-to-one or many-to-one?
So many
Well,
to
the
one.
horizontal, right? So that is how we establish. Now for the domain, okay, you can turn your mic off. So we are going to do this step by step. So I'm sure it's difficult to find this out. So what we'll do is, as I said, the domain is the set of all the x values, right? X coordinates. So the domain is the set of all the x coordinates. So if you can see, the x coordinate goes from positive infinity, right? So यो ग्राफलाई मैले यतिकै तान्दै 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 यसरी यसरी लग्यो भने so all the possible, so you can you see 0 has a value 1, right? So 0 has a value of 1. Similarly, 1 has a value of 4. 2 has a value of something up here, I don't know, maybe 8. Similarly, 3 has a value in graph. So every particular number on the positive x-axis has a value on this graph, right? If that makes sense, please type 1. If that does not make sense, please type 0. So every value on the positive x-axis has a corresponding y value and falls on the graph. So if that makes sense, please type 1. If that does not make sense, please type 0. So it makes sense to Roshan. Okay, all right, exactly. So that's amazing. So it makes sense to most of you, as seen from my phone. The same thing goes for the negative x-axis, right? All the values. So if you can see here, so this is 0, -1 has a value here, right? -1 has a value, -2 has a value here, -3 has a value here, -4 has a value somewhere here. If I'll extend this graph, -4 has a value, right? So every negative so everything on the negative side of the number line, right? So on the left hand side also has a value, right? So if you think about it, the x coordinate goes from -infinity, which is on this side, किनकि यता हामी जति जति गयो त्यति त हामी नेगेटिभ इन्फिनिटीमा जान्छ नि त. This is -4, -5, -6, -7. So I can go this way and I can go up until -infinity, right? And similarly on this side it goes up until +infinity, right? Right? So it goes up until +infinity, right? So that is basically the domain for this function, right? -infinity to +infinity. Does that make sense? So if it makes sense, please type y. If it doesn't make sense, please type n, and I'll be happy to do it again. So if it makes sense, please type y. On y, it goes from -infinity to +infinity. Okay, it makes sense to Sadiksha. It makes sense to Samishrika. All right, yes. So as can be seen from the chat, it makes sense to most of you, right? So Now, instead of writing it negative infinity to positive infinity, we know that the x contains all the real numbers, right? All the real numbers. So 0 is a real number, 1 is a real number, 2 is a real number. Similarly, -1 is a real number, -2 is a real number. So from negative infinity to positive infinity, all the numbers are actually a set of real numbers, right? So what I can actually say is the domain belongs to the set of real. Okay, is it correct to say that? Is it a better way to express this thing? So यो माथि मैले जुन लेखेको छु, x goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. Is it a better way to say this, that x belongs to the set of real numbers? So if you think it is a better way to say that and makes sense, please type 1. If it doesn't make sense, please type 0. So instead of saying x goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, as is the case on the x-axis, right? Because my graph has a y value for all the x values, I will simply say that x belongs to the set of real numbers, right? So if you think it's correct to say that, please type 1. Otherwise, type 0. It seems it makes sense to most of you. So my domain is now represented by this particular notation. So x belongs to the set of all the real numbers. Now similarly, if you look at the y values for this graph, so here the y value is what? So the coordinate of this point is 0, 1, right? So the coordinate of this value is 0, 1. Similarly, the coordinate of this particular point is 1, 4, right? Similarly, it goes on. यसै गरी यतापट्टि के छ त? The coordinate is -1, 0 here. Similarly, it is -2, 1, right? And so it goes. So if you think about it, जति जति म यो ग्राफलाई यता यता लाँदै गर्छु, it's always going to take a positive y value, right? Negative y value भनेको के हो त? It's only on this side, right? Negative y value भनेको it's only on the bottom of this particular axis, right? तर यो हाम्रो ग्राफ के छ? एक्सिस को लाइक y एक्सिस को पोजिटिभ साइडतिर फर्केको छ नि, हैन? सो इज इट अ फेयर value is always greater than or equal to 0 in this particular function is what? 0, right? तो कति लाग्छ? त्यो भ्यालु 0 हुन्छ। तर यहाँ भन्दा यता पनि गयो भने, यहाँ भन्दा यो पर्टिकुलर पोइन्ट भन्दा लेफ्टमा पनि गयो भने -2 हुने बित्तिकै y को भ्यालु के छ? +1. -2 हुने बित्तिकै के छ? y को भ्यालु के छ? +4 छ, right? So the value of y for this is always going to be greater than 0 on the left. Similarly, on the right side, as I go on this, the value of y for this function is always going to be greater than 0, right? So it is safe to say that the range for this function, which is denoted by y, because the range is the set of all y coordinates, is always greater than 0. Now, if that makes sense, please type yes. If that does not make sense, please type N. It makes sense to Mehak, it makes sense to Sudarshan, makes sense to David, Janice. All right, so that's basically the way we find out the domain and range. So we will look at the graph once again. So अब के गर्ने भन्दाखेरि, so we found this one earlier. So see, this was the function, right? So as you can see, the domain is the set of all real numbers, right? The domain is the set of all real numbers, as can be shown by the red line on the graph, because the x value contains all the possible all possible numbers on the x-axis, right? Similarly, range कहाँबाट सुरु हुन्छ? The minimum is from 0, right? So your particular point where it starts. So let me use a different color. So it starts from this particular value and then it goes all the way up. So the range is y is greater than or equal to 0, right? So now, as an exercise, I'm going to assign you to do some of these. So you have to find out, so please write it down. Please find out the domain and range of this particular function when y equals to root under x minus 5. So this is one of your assignments, right? And similarly, I'm going to share this particular screen with you, an image of this thing as your assignment, right? And then you need to find out the domain and range for this particular function. So I think that is more or less for today. So we covered a lot of things today. So we covered about domain and range. We also reviewed our knowledge of knowledge of functions, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the assignment with you as a file, and I want you all to send over the answers to me before 12 p.m. tomorrow. So thank you so much and have a good rest of the day.